There we go. I think. Oh yes, hallelujah! You can hear us now.
Yay!
Woo! Okay, we're gonna go through that crazy chat that we just went through all over again. So you're gonna have to excuse me because we don't know what we're doing. We're just gonna have fun here. And let me get this humongous light off of my head. There you go. That's a little bit better. Okay.
I'm gonna fix your screen.
Is it better?
Well, yeah, you're getting chopped off in
Oh, that's a
Wonderland. That's over here.
Oh,
There we go.
there we go. Okay, that's a little better.
Now we can really see.
There we go. Okay, that's good. So we're going to introduce ourselves again because we got cut off. And I was saying that these amazing ladies are here for a cruise that we're going to go to. This is my first time on a cruise, and I'm super excited. I know out of like living in South Florida, you think I'd go to more cruises. I've been here my entire life, and I've never been to a cruise. So this is a totally new experience. There's something about a hurricane being out there. Somebody said the weather was not going to be any good. I'm not sure what I'm getting myself into, but if anything, I'm stuck with these girls and we're going to have a blast. So this is kind of our kickoff party, okay? They're from, originally all three of them are from Wisconsin. Morgan is living in Kansas City now. We met through the homeschooling conferences. And then I met Kelly and I met Becky through Morgan. And so they're staying in my house here, and about like at 8 o'clock at night, I'm like, okay, girls, I'm having this mommy hour tonight. I would just love for you guys to come in and join us. Like, you know, so we set up this entire little thing with the lighting, and we got ourselves all made up in about 15, maybe, I think it was like 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, girls, I'm getting the lighting ready. So here we are. We finally got the sound right. And what we're going to do is just real quickly introduce ourselves and tell you the ages of our kids and so forth. In the meantime, I'm going to pick, like, we have our tea. We're getting ready with that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Morgan. I live in Kansas City. Like Shirley said, I have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl, ages 10, 8, and 4, and I've been married for 12 years.
Awesome. My name is Kelly, and I've been married for 14 years. And I have an almost 16-year-old. I have an 11-year-old, and I am from Wisconsin. Yes.
I'm Becky, and I'm from Wisconsin. I have 3 children. I have a 16-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And I've been married 15 years.
Awesome. And I'm Shirley, and I am 20. I was going to say I'm 21 years old. Woo! No, I'm 39 years old, and I've been married for 21 years, and I have a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old. Those 3 are boys. And I have a 10-year-old daughter, a 7-year-old son, and a 4-year-old girl. So we definitely have like all the different ages, and we're going to be talking about, like, we're just going to get real and raw. Okay, no agendas. You guys are actually part of this. I want you to jump in. You can call me. My cell phone is 786-624-9444. 786-624-9444. If you have a question, you can text me or call me, and we'll answer them live, or you can put a question on the chat box. And we just want to know, what is your biggest, most pressing concern or victory when it comes to parenting? Like, what is one thing that was your biggest struggle, and then maybe you're still struggling through it, or maybe you had this big struggle and now you have a victory. So we want to hear either way. So let's start with that with us and just see, okay, like, what do you think was your biggest struggle when it came to parenting?
Like, it can be in general.
In general.
Or now, or whatever.
No, in general. Let's go with in general.
Okay. I think in general would be making sure that trying to figure out how to just go through the whole disciplining or raising them up and, you know, correcting them without completely losing their heart. Without, you know, it's like, how do you keep repeating yourself and making sure they're doing what they need to do so they learn how to stand task without, you know, them losing their heart in the process.
Right. And so I know exactly what you mean, because so many times when we're parenting, especially when they're young, right? Like, you probably say that's when they're younger. Like, when you're younger, that you're disciplining like all the time. You're just trying to get them to obey quickly, telling them to be orderly, telling them to pick up, and you feel like you're doing that the entire day.
Yeah.
And yet there's like a moment where you're like, whoa, you know, this maybe is going to make me disconnect from my children. Like, maybe they'll hate me because I'm, you know, I'm being this sergeant mom all the time. And yet, why did you feel that was your biggest struggle? Like, was it just because you had this fear that you were going to be?
No, I was seeing it in my oldest, actually. And he's my 10-year-old. It was there was more, not frustrations, but more things I had to keep correcting him on. And then I could tell he would, like, you know, get quiet and then kind of distance himself. So that was just something that I was like, okay, how do I keep doing this without losing him? Like, without losing his heart, because I'm like, really, I think we can work through so many different things if you still maintain their heart and their openness.
Wow, that's good. So what did you do?
Aside from a whole lot of prayer, I'm like, I don't know that I definitely haven't conquered it yet. I'm still working on just trying to figure out. I mean, what you said on your last webinar or 2 webinars ago, of making sure you're speaking life into them.
Right.
That's, I think, you know, you can only take so many cuts before you have to build them up, because it's, if, you know, statistically correct of you have to have 10, positive things to 1 negative. Like, that's mainly what I am working on. And
Yeah.
hopefully.
So is it something that you still struggle with now?
Yeah, I would say. I mean, they're young. I don't ever want to lose their hearts whatsoever. I want them to know, or, you know, even just if they say something bluntly and honestly, not reacting to them like in a harsh manner that they're like, oh, well, we won't take that road again, because I've done that plenty of times.
Right.
It's like, okay, wait, hold on, let me take that one back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think all of us struggle with that. You know, I think we can all relate to feeling like, why are we doing this right? Can we, you know, could we get to the point where our children get angry or bitter or upset because we are disciplining them? And I think it's a fine line, because sometimes children, honestly, like, they could manipulate the fact that, like, they're pretending to be upset at you, or maybe like getting quiet. So you have to sort of determine. I think I would, if I was going to default, I'd go towards really honoring their attitude, and like, in other words, I wouldn't necessarily go, well, I think he's lying, like he's just pretending, like he's trying to manipulate me. I think they have the potential to do that sometimes, but I would default towards believing that they're just getting hurt. And I would work more, right? Like what you said, I love how you said you focused more on giving them the words of affirmation, so that they wouldn't, so that they felt compensated. Because to have a functional family, and I've mentioned this so many times, to have a functional family, you need that balance between unconditional love, and you need the balance between discipline. And like, when a child doesn't get the unconditional love and they get just punishments and discipline all the time, then they lack, you know, it's not in balance, it's not in alignment. But the opposite happens when they get too much of the love but not enough of the discipline, then you're out of balance. But I think, like, you're right on with making sure. I mean, it's a valuable concern, it's a valid concern, and yet you've addressed it so well. And she has amazing kids. Like, her children are very obedient, probably like 95% of the time.
I would like go 75.
Okay, 75. So,
maybe.
but she's worked really hard. You know, her and her husband have really worked hard to winning those children's hearts.
My husband's better at being consistent than I am. He's super consistent with not letting them get away with things. I tend to not be, but
he balances it out super
he does.
because it's such a blast. I mean, like, he's the kind of guy. Today they posted a video on their Facebook page, and it's Morgan Schneiderwind, which is kind of difficult to find, but
It's actually Morgan Elizabeth.
is it Morgan
Yeah.
Elizabeth? Okay, so it's Morgan Elizabeth Schneiderwind. So if you find something like that, like, you could see her husband tagged her on a video, and he's having a blast while he's on a road trip with the kids. Like, she's right here in Miami, and he's having a blast. And so he really is able to balance out. And I think the bringing in the laughter and the joking and the fun with the kids really allows the discipline to come in.
It's definitely been a blessing in that he has their heart. Like, he has every single one of them in a different manner wrapped around his little pinky. Like, they love him. They go with him for hours and hours at a time, and they would be so fine doing it all the time. Like, they love being with him. So
Yeah, he's a big kid.
Super
He's
helpful.
awesome. All right, so Miss Kelly, tell us like what's been the biggest struggle that you've had, that you've struggled with.
Mine, what comes to me is I was married before, so I have a blended family. So I have my 15-year-old who is from my first marriage, and it's balancing that friend versus mom and wanting to protect, sometimes, just
Yes.
a little too much. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
So is that something you're still dealing with, or is it something that you feel like, okay, it's a concern, but I've kind of got it down, or you're still on the trip? Like just learning, maybe still in the process.
I think it's kind of like this. So right now, I think life is always like this. Parenting is like that.
Yeah.
It's like
So-
one day you got it down, and the next day it's like, darn. I like the friend part of it because it allows them to open up and not feel like, oh, I can't come to you about stuff, And yet there's other times where we have to step in and go, okay, this is either a yes or a no, and that's final.
Right.
So it's just balancing it, blending.
Yeah, that's a good point, because there really could be a lot of there could be, I think it does happen where just for any mom that has a teenager, like I know that Gus and I have had to learn and to step into that transition of, hey, they're becoming a teenager. We want to relate with them. We want to have fun with them. We want to be their friend. We want them to tell us everything. And yet, like you said, you have to draw the line. Like some things, no, you can't do that. But why, mom? Like you're my buddy. Because I said so. That's why. So, and it is a process. It's an art that you just get better and better and better at it. But would you agree that the key thing is to be proactive? Yeah. Like if you're just right. Okay, say something. Like what do you think about it? She was like, yeah. I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
Consistency.
Miss Becky.
I think that's probably what.
No, you agree. Why do you like that? Like, why did you agree with that?
Just because I think it's important to be part of your children's life, know what's going on at all times, and just be involved.
Yeah,
I always talk to them. I'm open with them. I want them to tell me everything. So
right. And what do you think about those times when, like, are you ever afraid that they would say something that you're not ready to hear?
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
I didn't want to know that.
Yes, I've found out certain things. They do tell me things, and I've chose to just accept it. Be open with them about that and say, you shouldn't be doing that, but I'm glad you told me that you have done that. So,
Ooh, that's good.
yes.
And you have to, like, you almost have to do the poker face.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like,
I'm not good at that poker face.
Yeah.
you'll get good at it. When you're
Instead
a
of
teenager,
jaw.
What? I'm gonna run to the bathroom. I'll be back in 5 minutes, and we'll finish this conversation.
Yeah.
So the question to you, is the same as the other girls. Like, what has been the thing that you struggled with the most in your parenting? And then maybe you've had a victory, or you're still in the process of experiencing.
Oh, just keeping them on track with school and knowing the importance that it's their future. Keeping up with their homework and being responsible that way. Just picking up after themselves. That's a big deal for me. That they clean up after themselves. So.
Right.
Yeah.
And why has that been so important to you?
Just because it teaches them the responsibility of, this is what I'm going to have to do when I'm older. I have my own place. I'm going to want to treat it nice.
Mary Poppins doesn't come with.
And yes, yeah. And that if they're going to go to college, they need to strive for that, for the grades to be up there. So.
Right. Okay, so that's pretty neat, because we've had this melting pot of girls. Like, I've not, academics as the grades and so forth, like, hasn't always been my strong point. I've strived to make sure that I raise lifelong learners, but I can say that it's been like a number one priority. So it's really neat to just talk to you and see how a parent I think about being a mom, you just give them the best of what you have. You put your best foot forward. Like, my gift is obviously speaking. I don't know if it's a gift, but I speak. So because I like to speak and I love to be expressive about my ideas and my opinions, I knew that I wanted to pass that on to my kids. So they are.
But you also love to encourage people, like
Yeah.
everybody. You encourage your kids all the time, and you encourage people, everybody around you all the time. Like your gift that God gave you is encouragement.
It just is. It's just like, so just take Shirley home with me in my suitcase.
Well, thank you. I think, I think it was a gift, but I think the hardest thing for me came doing it at home. Because, I mean, so many times Gus and I would have the conversation, my husband, where he would say, you're so encouraging to everybody else, but right here at the house, you just don't encourage anybody. And that's when I was like, well, what do you mean? I say one discouraging thing, but not like discouraging, but like you didn't pick up your shoes to the kids, or the dishes aren't done right, stuff like that. And then I would say the positive thing, like, wow, that was really awesome. I love how you do this. And they still felt like I was really discouraging. And that's when I realized that I needed to just step it up a notch. Like, I needed to make it really amazing. And I needed to say so many more words of affirmation to the very few words of exhortation that I was giving. And I know Morgan has made reference to a webinar that I did last week. If you want to see it, you can go to shirleysolis.com/words. shirleysolis.com/words, and you'll be able to see the replay. Okay, I have, all right, so I moved the headset so I could see your comments and stuff. So Sarah says, yes, I so know the feeling and struggling there. So I'm going to share with you what my biggest struggle in parenting has been, and I've had so many. So it's difficult to choose one, because I think that's why I love to share about parenting and marriage and relationships, because I've struggled with every single one of them, and not lightly. Like, I've struggled deeply in every one of them, and I've been so persistent with wanting to get better that I've learned a lot of things in the process. So I'm going to choose just one that hopefully will be the right one for you. But in the meantime, I do want you guys to just put something on the chat box so that I can read. Like, text me or send me a message. I'm checking Facebook too to see if anything's coming in on there. But feel free to come in and ask any question or something that you want. Okay. So for me, the biggest struggle, like when I think of my parenting years, the biggest struggle for me probably came when I was learning to discipline. Like, my mom had me in check. I mean, she was a single mom, but Hispanic parents, like, there's a great little video. It's called La Chancla, and the chancla is this, like the sandal. That's, like, you could call it sandalia, but it's the chancla. And the chancla is your sandal. And like Hispanic parents, they use this as weapons. It's like, they just throw it at you, and you're like, oh. So, it's kind of like Black parents are like that too.
At least it's always with you.
It's exactly like, it's always with you, Like, American parents, you guys need to, like,
Get something that we keep with us.
Something that you keep with you all the time. So Hispanic parents, I mean, the bad thing is, like, when your mom is wearing high heels, oh my gosh, be careful. It's like, a knife. My grandmother threw a knife on my dad, and it landed, like, right here, and she was cutting a piece of meat. I know you're going to think we're, like, savages. Most Hispanics, we're not savages. It's just part of our culture. We're, like, very expressive, and so much so that we throw knives. I'm just kidding. Aggressive. We're passionate people.
There you go. Passion's a good word.
Passion is a good word. So my grandmother, who happens to actually be a very mild, soft, and gentle woman, but I swear my dad must have done something that just totally got her, like, to the limit. So she was cutting meat, and she threw this knife at him. It landed somewhere on him, on his hand. And about like a week later, he had this huge infection. They took him to the hospital, and a piece of the meat that was in the knife had gotten stuck in his skin. And so it just created a huge infection. All that to say that the shoes are weapons, and that my mom had me in check. And she would look at me like, and I was like, I would stay still. I wouldn't move. I mean, you don't want to get my mom mad. She was sergeant mom. What is that word? Colonel? Whatever. Which one? The one she says.
Colonel.
That one. My accent still doesn't let me say some things like, never mind. We're having dinner. I'm like, you need this spice and this spice and this spice. And they're like, this is what? I'm like, what? Which one?
Cumin.
Cumin. It doesn't read like that phonetically, but whatever. So
Most of them don't.
they don't make sense. But so anyway, it's like, you know, my mom had me in check, and yet when I had my kids, when I had my first child, he was 2 years old. He used to choke children. He used to go up to children and just choke them and bite them, and I didn't know how to discipline. And that was like my biggest struggle. Moms that saw me coming with him, they were afraid of me. They were afraid of me, and they were afraid of him. Like, there's a lady that's got the little boy that bites children and, you know, chokes them. So I tried like timeout, and I tried talking to them nicely, and I just tried so much stuff, and I couldn't get a hold of it. Like, I remember one time I went to a therapist when he was about 1.5, and I said, you know, I just don't know what to do. He doesn't obey me. He doesn't mind me at all. And she said, well, you know, the best thing is to do timeout. So hold him down. And I was like 8 months pregnant. She says, hold him down and keep him on timeout. Well, he was kicking me. You don't keep holding a 1.5-year-old while you're pregnant. He's kicking you while you're putting him on timeout. So I didn't really have a way. Like, I struggled for a while in trying to figure out the right way to discipline. And when I finally, I think that's the one thing that I had to work the hardest to finally find a solution. And then when I found a solution, to be really consistent with it. And it took a while. It was a process of consistency and discipline for me.
It's always very inconvenient.
It is. Like, yes, Morgan.
It is because they just naturally tend to do things when you're like out and about, or you don't have things with, or the people, like the wrong people. You just like, please don't do that while we're out in public, or we're gonna go meet these new people. And it's like, why did you do that right then at that moment? Is that necessary?
Right.
It's just like, oh my gosh. It's like, have we not addressed this 100 times that you just decided to bust it out here?
Yes. See why I love Morgan? I just love hanging out with her. We have fun. So it's true. It's like not convenient at all. But did you girls, any of you struggle with that?
With how to discipline them? Yeah.
Well, like, just, I mean, you grew up in a really nice home, sort of.
I mean, I would definitely say had dysfunctions, but
No,
overall, yeah.
It was a nice home, like dad and mom, and just very loving people. And so, being raised in that kind of an environment, I mean, know how to discipline, or because I was
I
disciplined.
mean, we got spanked for sure. And then when we got older, we lost things. But so I guess for me, I knew that spanking was not. It was like it was going to be implemented. But now for me, it's finding the line of, okay, does this need a spanking, or does this, like, what do we need to discuss? And Kurt's favorite phrase is, I'm going to give you, like, mercy or grace this time. Like, you're not going to get spanking, and he'll talk to him forever. Like, he's super good that way. He'll discipline them, but then he'll talk, like, twice as long.
so they'd rather be like, Mom,
Right,
please spank us.
Please just spank us and get us over with. We don't want to sit here for 3 hours and talk about it.
Right.
So, yeah, I think just same thing with, like the spanking, or is it something else that needs to be addressed, and getting them to really connect dots, because half the time they don't even know what they were thinking when they did it. So you still try to every kid is so different too.
They are.
I mean, you can, look at one wrong and you bust out crying, and the next one you could spank, 5 times, and they just go right back into it again.
You've seen that.
Yeah.
She's been a witness of that in my house.
Yeah, I've been here for that a couple times.
So let's talk about spanking. Like, let's get, that's kind of a controversial topic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one that people like. I mean, did you spank?
Yeah, we actually have a paddle with the verbs obey your parents to make live
Right.
long on the line. Long,
Live long on the earth.
live long. Thank you. And we would talk about that too, and that was one thing that we would say. But then we would also say, I love you. This isn't something I want to do, but this is something that you need to learn from. And it's the difference between anger and love, really.
Right.
I don't know. I came from a rougher background, but it didn't make me that way. But I was probably more that soldier type mom. I want them to know that no, that doesn't fly. And they're actually really respectful for the most part. I think just going through the teenage years, so something must have happened.
Yeah. What about you?
I definitely spanked. sometimes out of anger, sometimes out of love. But yeah, I did. I've always heard the phrase, spare the rod, spoil the child. So that's the way I grew up. So it was kind of, we just passed it on that way. And same thing with my husband's family. So
So let's define spanking, because I think so many parents grew up with, like, here in the United States, or even, I mean, I just told you about, like, the chancla, and I guess, I don't know what this we consider, like, secret weapon, parent to secret weapon, but I guess anything where there's a physical punishment or a physical consequence to the child, people have related to spanking. But there's actually, like, a very loving way to do it, and I think spanking has gotten this really bad reputation.
Well, the issue is that people don't understand the difference between abuse and spanking. It's knowing when to stop, or if you're angry, don't do it. Come back when you are not upset about it, and then spank them. Because if you're not upset about something, there's no way you're going to hurt them. But when you're upset in the moment, you can do a whole lot more, emotionally and physically, than opposed to not.
Well, I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to say, like, learning how to discipline with a little ruler actually saved me from physically abusing them, if that makes sense. Just because since I grew up in a home with, like, chancla and pots and pans and stuff, that was my tendency, would be to discipline out of anger, to just really burst out and I had a lot of accumulated anger inside of me. So the tendency for me was, when I would lose it, to just go to that place. I mean, that's where I saw my potential, like, to go there. So learning that there was a way to discipline, like, okay, we have a little ruler. It's never in front of people. Like, we never humiliate them. We never use our hand. We never use anything. Like, we don't use a spoon. We don't use a whip. We don't use a belt. It was always in a very loving way where I was still calm. So there was a system that I learned that allowed me to stay relaxed, that gave me a tool so that I wouldn't take it to where it would have taken, like, it would have gone, which was, like, probably an abuse. But because I had this tool and I remained calm and I was very loving, and there was a training process, it actually, I feel like it saved me. But we do have to be cautious, because unfortunately there's so many people out there who, if their heart isn't right, they don't have common sense, and there's definitely been some incidents where children have gotten hurt. I mean, overall, anyway, we could be very controversial, but overall, I feel like there's been probably better, like, when it's been done right, like in the case of us here, when it's been done right, when it's been done in love, when it's been done with care, it works. But when it's been done wrong, then it causes anger, bitterness in the child, and so forth. So I see Sarah said, I found that when I was most humbled or my weakest moments, that it made the biggest difference in changing their behavior or attitudes. It's not fun when my computer just buffers all the time instead of playing. Yeah, that's true. It does buffer a lot when it's a live stream like this. But yeah, I like what you said, that you're most humbled or in your weakest moment, that it made the biggest difference in changing their behavior or attitude. So have you ever experienced that when you're feeling humbled or vulnerable, they can see that you are real, like you're not this authority person that never fails? It's almost like okay for them to see that you make mistakes.
Yeah, that's where I was going to say, even just saying sorry. Sometimes I've spoken out of anger and went, oh, I should have said that. And it's going and apologizing and saying, what, I'm human too. I mess up just like you messed up. We're the same that way, but it's saying sorry.
That's good.
Yeah, they definitely don't ever need to think that we're perfect or we always have the right answer. I mean, he's only 10, but he catches things and he'll be like, you weren't supposed to do that, or you weren't supposed to say that. I'm like, yes, thank you. Keep moving. Yeah. So, I mean, it is fun, but I think it's really humbling and really amazing that God gave us our kids to, like, keep growing us. Like, he can take us so far, and then he gives us kids, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is a whole nother ball game. This is, like, you just never stop learning. Every single day you learn something. It's like, wow.
And from them, really, too.
Right.
Just
The things they say, and it's just like, ooh, Oh, okay. Sure, we'll figure this out.
I feel like there's such a mirror. There are mirrors. So whenever we want them to change, or whenever we see a fault in them, what's helped me is to look at myself. Like if they're not being orderly, so I used to be kind of critical, well, very critical, and we'd sit in the dinner table, and I was, I had very little patience, type A personality. I was like, so and so just got on my nerve today, blah 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 blah, and then it was like, and so, I mean, seriously, blah, 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 blah. And then one day when they got to be about teenagers, they went off. They were like, well, because mom, so-and-so, and I didn't like hearing it. Like, I didn't even realize that I had this critical personality or whatever, that just really not encouraging, ugly side of me. And because I figured I was just making comments. Like, who else are you going to make comments about if it's not in your family? And thought it was normal, but when I heard it in them, I knew that, and I didn't like it. And what I immediately did was I looked at myself and started noticing my speech and realized, like, oh, I do that. They do it because I do it. So I think that's a really good thing to do when you, especially, I think at any point, if the children are arguing, like, notice how you are. Like, if they're disrespectful towards you, or you think about the government. I mean, so many people may have seriously.
Yeah.
Oh no, the dogs are coming in. Morgan does not like dogs. We're in a webinar. Hang out, live, get the dogs out. Okay, we have these two little guys over here running on the dogs. So it really, they're wet dogs. So we just got, I just started looking at myself and so, like the government. So some parents are like, because the government this and the president that, and the church leader this, or or my company CEO this, and the children hear that, just like my children heard that, and it just becomes part of their life, and then they disrespect you, and you're like, don't disrespect me, don't you talk like that about me, It's like, we're doing it, so they do it because we do it. So it's always a good idea to remember that they're our mirror, and they hold us accountable, and they help us grow.
I think the worst part is, like, my daughter will correct my youngest the same way I correct her or them, and I'm like, that sounds horrible, don't do that. And she's like, she just looks at me like, and then I know I do the same things my mom did, and I'm just like, I knew I was never gonna do that, and it just came out.
Wow.
I was like, oh, that's horrible.
That's a good point. Like, yeah. So how have you guys dealt with the issue of repeating your parents' mistakes or not repeating your parents' mistakes? Or, I mean, they did, like, our parents did a lot of things right, okay? We did beautiful things right. I mean, they did beautiful things. They made us who we are. And there were some things that they did wrong. And so we really value what they did right. We give them credit for what they did right. And we learn from their mistakes, and we try not to do them. So how did you guys deal with that?
Man, I'm trying to think in a specific. I think mine was because I was raised extremely legalistic. So, there was no drums, there was no, there was only dresses. There were so many different things that I completely didn't have a ground for, like how does God really feel about us? And so for me, that's been like just an ongoing continual learning process of like, who is the Lord and how does he really feel about me? Or, and so for me, my major thing was I don't want to have the legalism at all. And so it's been really interesting teaching them as they get older. It's like, what do I really actually believe? What was I just taught? What was, I want them to have a relationship with the Lord on their own. I don't want to raise them for me to have their relationship with the Lord. So that was a major part of what my mom taught me, something extremely important in that, negative, but then also extremely important of, she just so desperately wanted to, to make sure we did our, put our whole life for the Lord. And that was, what had been presented to her at the time. And so just the amazing things that she was willing to do because she thought that was, like what the Lord wanted her to do. Like she was willing to do all these, uncomfortable not very enjoyable things. I didn't appreciate it in my teenage years, that's for
Right.
sure. But now it's just like, I mean, I don't like my feathers to get ruffled even a little bit, you know, when it comes to my faith or whatever, or I just won't say things. But I was like, she was so willing to put out so much more, even though it was a negative. But, you know, being able to look back at it now, it was a positive, but now figuring out then how do I act on this without it being just what they're taught.
What about you girls?
That's a hard question.
It is because
It is.
Like-
Elementary terms, please.
I realized that there were some things that I could change on my own easily, like certain patterns, you know, like the not spanking out of anger, not throwing the chancla, you know. There were some things that I could change on my own, but there were some things that were rooted in me. Like no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't change them. So it wasn't until about 5 years ago that I really realized that I needed to go much deeper into my childhood wounds, I guess you could call them, and address them. And I'm definitely not a person that lives in the past. I mean, I like to be, I'm like all about the present and the future, about enjoying the today and planning for the future. Why-
Deal with it and move forward.
right, like deal with it and move forward. But I feel like learning this, like to go back into my past and figuring out what things had not been healed, allowed me to uproot the lies, and it allowed me to just completely undo the last little bits of old patterns that I was carrying from my mom, you know, or from my dad for that matter. Somebody's calling. Okay, is it one of you girls? Oops, sorry. No, it's my son. Hold on, mom, time. Hold on, please. Somebody pick up the phone for big guy. You know this is live when we are doing this. Like we're on a live webinar. Call your father. Bye, love you. Ah. So
I can't read the screen from here, so you'll have to.
Yeah. yeah, that was funny. Okay, so Carrie is saying, I grew up as an only child, therefore being a mom of 6 is very different discipline-wise. My mom just shot me a look and I behaved. All my kids are different. Absolutely. I mean, like, the parents that have like one child, you could have one child that is enough for 6, and then you could have like 6 that are easily handled. You know, it is very different, and we learned that with child number 5. Like child number 5 for us was the challenge. Everything we knew about parenting, we had to completely rethink, re-engage, and think through all of our ways. Like that's when we had to up-level the words of affirmation. We had to just really be about creating a destiny for our children, to really be speaking into his life, because it was like, oh my gosh, with as much as we're having to discipline this child, he might have think that he was bad, but he wasn't. He's an amazing child. So so we had to rethink that. But yes, all children definitely are different. Carrie also says, my mom was militant, so I'm the opposite, probably a little too free. I always look at things this way: when you know better, you do better. Well, that's good. That's like, you know, you're creating consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Like you know, when you know better, you do better. But sometimes you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like,
I feel like the Lord always brings along those processes, though, of like, okay, this is what you're gonna learn now. And it's just like, oh, yay, we're learning processes.
okay. And that reminds me, like we were talking a little while ago about like how your mom had this, like, I don't know if all of us had a spiritual dimension, like a spiritual upbringing when we were growing up. I mean, and in some way I did. I came from the Catholic Church, but we didn't always go to church. I mean, it was like twice a year for Easter and for Christmas. Like
The
I know
important ones.
the important ones. What about you? You two?
I was Lutheran. We did go every Sunday. Us kids weren't required to sit in church. We could go and play with our friends or hang out. So
Yeah.
didn't learn a lot till later on in life.
Sure. What about you?
I was raised Southern Baptist, so it was stricter and I guess a lot of it I just didn't understand because our home life was different from what it was on Sunday, and I had one parent on Sunday, I had two parents, but like I didn't know her
Carrie?
name. Yeah, but
Carrie.
I had a dad that was missing most of the time because of his job. So it was kind of a one-parent home. But it was different when dad would be there. It was a whole nother environment. So I don't know. I didn't really have. It wasn't until later in life that I found that relationship and not just all the rules, with the church.
Right. So I always try to tell parents that we are three-part beings. Like, we have this physical body, and then there's our soul, and then there's our spirit. And we'll usually find parents who are like one type of parent will focus too much on the academic and forget, like, the academic, I feel like, has to do with the physical, the physical area of life, or like the physical dimension. So they'll focus on the academic, they'll focus on the physical, on the striving, but then they might disregard the emotional, and then may disregard the spiritual. Or maybe you'll have like a parent who is strong in the academic, strong in the spiritual, and they forget the emotional. Or you have a parent who is,
So what are there's 3 or 4?
there's 3.
Okay.
So it's basically like the physical dimension of people, of a child. There's the soul, anything that has to do with the heart, with the feelings, the emotions, the belief systems.
Okay.
And then there is the spiritual dimension of a child.
Okay.
So what I try to encourage parents to do is make sure that you are increasing each level of that child. So we tend to work on the physical, because we know the child needs to eat, the child needs to grow, they need to develop. And then, many of us, some of us didn't, but, you two did have somewhat of a spiritual upbringing. So your parents did both. But don't you think that the emotional aspect of a child, or the emotional education for the majority of us, is like very little? And yet it's the one that causes the majority of issues. Right, because when we don't know how to handle emotions, we don't know how to set boundaries, we don't know how to actively, because out of your soul and out of your heart is where all of the relationship issues happen. The good things or the bad things. Like, your emotional health has everything to do with how you'll relate with others, how successful you'll be with others, how you set your boundaries, and how you'll relate, and how you'll set margin in your life, and how you take care of yourself. But I feel like very few of us had that. Like, our parents didn't have it because that wasn't something that was talked about in their generation. And then now we need it, but we don't have it. So What do we do?
They were like the hardworking. How else would you put that? Like, there was everything about the physical needs.
Yeah,
there wasn't the.
it was about providing for the physical needs.
I mean, even like in our family, we were, both my parents were Christians. I was raised really well, but they owned their own business. And so it tended to be, the emotional side of it definitely got left out. It wasn't, it wasn't necessarily that they did something wrong, but it was, how we took it, and then it created wounds that they didn't even know that had been there. But, in the busyness of, and then you just learn that you don't want to cause another issue. So you just learn to not say something. You keep it to yourself, and you don't mention it. So.
Right. But, I feel like we definitely can't afford that anymore. Like, we're not living in a time when we could just ignore the situations. Like, we eat pretty healthy, and eating pretty healthy means that we have to educate ourselves. Like, no longer can you just rely on the doctor to tell you what to eat. I mean, doctors often, I don't know if all of them, but definitely a lot of them get paid from the pharmaceutical companies to recommend things. Like, the profession, the doctor profession, the medical profession has changed a lot. So we've learned that as parents, we have to educate ourselves. Like, we have to learn to read the red labels. We have to learn to figure out what's going on. And with our food, we have to just become more aware of that, right? Well, I feel like it's got to be the same way with the emotional. Like, we can't rely on a psychologist anymore. I'm saying, like, not that we wouldn't go to a psychologist. I definitely want to honor them. But we can't just rely on them telling us what's wrong with our child, or a therapist, or even a counselor. It's like, we need to become aware. We need to understand and read these books. But I understand that the majority of psychology books are not made for the layman. So but somehow, because I had to get my own healing, like I had to start learning some of this stuff, and I had to start understanding it and then translating it so that parents could understand it. And so as you understand your own emotional development and where you were lacking and what you didn't learn, then that way you could pass it on to your kids, right? And I know that may seem like an overwhelming thing to ask, but
There's a really good tool though
Mhm.
I found with like it was the 5 love languages. It
Yeah.
was for kids, and to sit down and just really get to know your child.
yeah,
I mean, I have 3, and I have 3 that are very much different, discipline very much different, receive it differently. But that book really opened my eyes, because there's some that would rather me play a game with them
yes.
than give a gift. There's, it was really amazing to see the differences. So I recommend just getting to know each of them.
Yes,
on
that's
a
important.
one-on-one basis.
Like 5 love languages, or there's Personality Plus that actually talks about their personalities, like if they're choleric, if they're melancholic, if they're sanguine, if they're phlegmatic, that's another, because you have to learn their personalities, you have to learn their learning styles. I mean, that's a good point to know that we is that the dog? What?
I'm sorry.
Was that a
sneeze?
Oh, sorry. I was like, oh, she's just okay.
No, the dog.
So that was funny. Okay, so yeah, it's like those books are super important to be reading, but then they're even to go beyond the, like, even deeper than that, understanding the emotional development of a child. Like, what did they need to learn by age 2? What did they need to learn by age?
Nobody tells you that.
Nobody
You
tells you that.
hope you're doing it right. It's just like parenting doesn't come with a manual. It's horrible. My friend that just had her her little girl's 1, and she just feels like she's like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. I'm like, nobody ever knows what they're doing. You just do it, and you hope you're doing it right.
Oh my gosh.
It's and so it cracks me up, because she will call frequently and ask questions, and I just love it, because I'm like, that's so true. I didn't know that at the beginning. Now 3 kids later, 10 years in, it's just like now you have all these answers that you didn't have at the beginning. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. It is like, oh, that you just, like, my brother had a baby and he's asking me to bring him some ball mix, and I'm like, just use olive oil, It's like, olive oil, that's so, I'm like, yes, olive oil on the skin, it's perfect for rashes, it works better, it's cheaper, So anyway, that's if you want to go like raw, But I want to take about, we're about getting to the 1 hour, because it's a mommy hour. And so I know you have taken this time to be with us for this hour and to share with us and to hear us talk and to just engage. And hopefully you've gotten something out of this, whether it was just knowing that all of us struggle, but that in the process, we need to have a sense of community. We don't know what we're doing. We didn't necessarily get a manual. It smells like the dog farted.
That's why I laughed.
Yeah, like we have a dog and it smells like the dog farted. Like this stuff happens,
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was like, well, am I the only one smelling that?
I'm like trying to ignore it, but you just can't go on anymore, It's just like, gosh,
Surely you have great dogs.
farty dogs. Goodness. Okay, well, see, we're live if this isn't
We're
scripted.
mommies. We've changed diapers.
Goodness,
right?
we've
It's
changed
not
diapers,
bad.
but so yeah, but it's so important to build that sense. I mean, it's not fun to drink fancy tea with dog fart.
Kind of ruins the moment.
It ruins the moment totally.
But that's being a mom. Like,
Yes.
you can create these perfect atmospheres where you think, and then it's just like, it just gets ruined and shot down, and you're just like kind of like slump, and you sit in your chair, and you're like, what? Why is this made so hard? It's like, I worked really hard to make this all perfect, and you guys came in, and it was like, wow, thank you so much for bringing me back down to earth in 2 seconds.
Right. Like
Awesome.
I mean, it took me 3 hours to clean this house, and now you guys made a mess in like
Yeah.
10 minutes.
But under 10 minutes.
And it's a balance of like, okay, I know my children are amazing. I know I love them. They're a delight. And yet, I've got to live with the chaos and the disorder. I mean, not that there's chaos all the time, because we certainly put things in order, but there's the chaos can happen really fast. So, but, I was saying, like, making the effort to build community, like to not be afraid to call someone and ask questions and say, yo, what did you do with this? Because I know that's how I survived. Like, I know it was through asking someone, it was through reading a book, it was through getting help. And there isn't necessarily a manual, but I sort of got the next best thing. So, so I want to tell you a little bit more about a program that I have. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to do that, just 2 minutes or so. It's called Building Character with Children. And it really came out of when I started working in the homeschooling community in 2006. Just like my children worked the cash register, and I said, well, I'm just going to start talking and sharing in workshops what I know, and that was building character. So I put together this workshop, and it was really popular. Like, we always have standing room only. It was the one thing that people wanted to learn from the most. And then over the years, I kept on building upon that and building it upon that. It was like it went from being a 1-hour workshop to now being a 20+ hour course. And the Building Character with Children program, for me, I don't think it's for everybody. I feel like it's just for those parents who are determined to be proactive, who want to raise powerful and amazing children. In my eyes, all children are powerful and amazing, but the parents need special tools to be able to lift them up. And in business, there's a practical way to look at numbers, and it says that there's an 80-20 rule, and that basically says that 20% of the things that we do will bring us 80% of the results. And I started thinking in parenting, it's the same way. Like, we do so many things wrong, you know,
Right.
but there's a 20% that we do that makes a total difference in the long term.
I'm really glad it's only 20%.
It is only
It makes me
20%.
feel so much better.
Yes. But which is the 20%? That's the, you know, because there's so many parents that do a lot of things and they strive, but they've been focusing on the wrong things, and that doesn't get results. And so the crazy person I am, I've sort of looked at my life, and then I've looked at parents and seen what worked, because I love picking people's brains. I'm like, oh, identify, this is one principle that works.
You taught me that a long time ago.
Really?
Because there was like so many things that I was concerned about that we weren't doing right, or that, you know, my husband wasn't doing right or whatever. And then you would give me an example of you growing up. You're like, my mom did these and these things wrong. And you're like, but it didn't matter, because it made up for it on all these other areas, and you still turned out okay. And
Yes.
so, like, I just have to keep reminding myself of that. If, you know, Kurt does something I disagree with, or if I do something he disagrees with, or vice versa, it's like God he works everything out, and it's phenomenal. But so that's given me the ability to step back if he's taking care of something, and, you know, be able to just let it go and not then cause rivalry between the two of us.
Exactly.
And be like, essentially I've learned everything and so much from you. So when you actually made a program, I was super, super excited about it. I was like, my friends need to know about this.
Yeah.
Because had I not had like almost 5-6 years solid of traveling with you and watching you raise your really difficult child, and then have like 4 amazing, and I was just like, were they all like this and they all just turned out amazing? I was like, oh my gosh. So I feel like, but you were always approachable, and so that you actually took the time to put together this curriculum of all of your just wisdom that the Lord's given you over the years. It was like, I was just like, oh my gosh, this needs to, like, everybody needs to know what it is.
Well, thanks, Morgan. I definitely didn't pay her to
No,
say
you
that. I didn't prepare for that, and but it is good to know that stuff that you know that we talked about like really made a difference at the end. And people do ask me, like, have your children always been this good? And I'm like, no, he used to choke children, you know. And it was identifying the stuff that I could do that was going to make a difference, you know. Looking even at my mom's, like the stuff that my mom did, even with the chanclas and the stuff that she would throw at me, there were some things she really did right. And so it was picking from those things, picking from what other parents did, speaking with friends that have had the results that I wanted when my kids were little, and then just start like choosing those principles and seeing, okay, this is what makes a proactive parent. This is what really, I mean, if nothing else, if you do these little things, and I know there's no formulas, but I do feel like, just like in health, I mean, if you take care of your health as much as you can, it will diminish the amount of disease you'll have. It'll diminish the sicknesses. And sure, you could end up being sick, but it's a lot less chances of that happening. So the Building Character with Children program is a 20-hour course. It's an online program inside a members area. parents pay a one-time fee, and then they have access to these videos whenever they need them. And there's basically 4 modules. Module 1, we talk about a family vision and having a purpose. Because to me, in corporations, there's always like, oh, what's your mission statement? What's your corporate goals? And yet in family, that is the most important thing we have. We seldom set goals for our family. We seldom have a vision. So in the first one, we spend a lot of time laying that foundation of what do you want it to look like? And then we lay that out, and I'm like, I'm the nerd. This is where the homeschooling mom in me comes. Like I have PDFs that you have to print out and do homework on and whatever. And then in week 2, we talk about character building, because that's like the most proactive thing you could do is train your children in character. Because when you're working on character with them, you're working on character with you. And the dog keeps farting. We haven't gotten out of this aroma. It's still here. It's like, oh my gosh, save us. I mean, I don't know where the dog is, but I'm going to make this quick, people. Okay, because we're suffocating here. The dog's actually in the other room, but it's like, woo. Anyway, so week 2, we talk about building character, how do you build habits, and how to seamlessly bring it into the family culture. Because it can't be hard. It has to be easy. It has to be part of what you do all the time. And then week 3, we talk about implementing that character trait and building it up by using chores and work. So chores at the house, you would never imagine, but doing chores with your family is all about uniting the family for one common goal. It's about uniting your family for one common goal. And that's just getting you to practice, because then you have a lifelong mission, like a big mission, a big plan, and mission on this planet. And our family goal, like Solis' family goal, is to help other families, all of the ages, like my 15, my 17, my 19-year-old, they're all about helping children their ages. They're all even about encouraging parents as well. And so now, because we worked and we did the chores as a family, it's almost like we know how to work together to accomplish one goal. We know that we can cover each other. And so that's what I use. I use the chores at home and the work to build that up and to instill that. And then the last week in the course, we talk about how to heal your wounds from childhood so that you can be a better parent. And so I actually do teach a lot of how to establish the emotional health in the home. And I know that there's no program that does that, because this is all stuff that I learned. And there's a lot of additional videos and a lot of additional PDFs that I've included there. There's one workshop I did that I included. It's included in there. It's called I Love You, But Sometimes I Don't Like You. And I know that, we all love our children, but sometimes we don't like them, And when that was very prominent, I feel like I needed to, I know. You're like, okay, we're done, people. We're done. So anyway, if you guys happen to want to find out more about it for this, just actually tomorrow night, we're ending the sale. It's $300 off, because normally it's $497. And for just this week, I slashed $300 off the price, and I'm making it $197 for all of that. So if you want to find out more about that, then make sure that you go to, what's the website again? Okay, it's buildingcharacterwithchildren.com/package. So it's buildingcharacterwithchildren.com/package. And if you're really serious about building a very strong, united family that nothing is going to tear apart, with a functional family that's going to have children that are happy, that are functional physically, emotionally, and spiritually, then by all means, make sure that you check this out and that you apply this, okay? So with all that said, is there anything else that you girls want to say? Probably not, because we just want to get out of this room so we don't have to smell the farty dogs. But is there anything you want to share?
No, I was just thinking about your email that I got this morning. I got it on my phone, just of what God calls us to, like what God calls us to as moms for training our children. And it's like, when somebody asks you the question of, so what do you do? And our response is, usually kind of shy or we don't even want to say it, I'm a stay-at-home mom, because people's automatic reaction is, well, what do you do all day?
Right.
And it's like, if it's not for us being there, all the time, or just in their lives or whatever, it's like God put it in our lap to train them to become who they're going to be. And it's just like, that's a heavy burden.
Yeah.
Like to completely train somebody from little on to who they're gonna be. It's like sometimes it looks good, sometimes it looks bad.
Yeah.
But just really thinking about that of how much time do you put into your kids so they become what you know that the Lord has for them,
Yeah.
whether you do or don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think big. Like, I think each one of my children are going to be like huge diplomats or something huge, in the world, like peace treaties and each one of our children have that potential. But I feel like in Joseph, like the story in the Bible of Joseph, he had to have a lot of character in his life in order to be able to go from being in jail to being able to maneuver an entire kingdom or whatever that was called, to being in charge of Egypt. Because you know what it's like to be in jail. I mean, like, can you imagine this guy's in jail and the jailer tells him that now he's in charge of the jail? Like, you're a prisoner and your jailer is telling the prisoner that now he's going to be in charge. I mean, that means that somehow Joseph had to have the right character traits, people skills, management, teamwork. Like, he just had to have a lot of things in order that were obvious so that God could use them and step them up. So for sure, I'm huge on that. So anyway, it's been an amazing, fabulous time that we've had with you. There's definitely going to be a replay that you're going to be able to watch. So yes. So we're going to send it to them. And we are just going to sign off for tonight. We're going to get ready for our cruise. And we're going to get out of this smelly room that smells like dog fart. So, hey, people, it's real. It looks fabulous. But there's a smelly, farty smell from dogs. I mean, I'd rather like get human fart anytime over this. This is pretty bad. And it's just the way life is. It's just parenting. It's being a mom. Sometimes it's like that. It looks good on the outside and it's messy on the inside. But you can always run off to the next room when you're done, right? All right. So we love you guys. We wish you the absolute best. Know that we're here to help you and to, answer any questions that you have for the future. All right. Well, you take care and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, girls. And these are my amazing guests.